He spent decades in Japan's most brutal prisons. 4 times they locked him away, and 4 times he escaped. This is the story of a man who defied the impossible. But how did one person survive freezing isolation and conditions designed to break the human spirit? Our story begins in the 1930s, a dark time in Japan's history. The nation was on a path to war, and its justice system was unforgiving. Prisons weren't about rehabilitation, they were about punishment. Yoshie Shiratori got caught in a brutal world of hard labor, tiny meals, and guards who ruled with an iron fist. Initially arrested for a robbery he claimed he didn't commit, a scuffle led to a man's death. Shiratori was blamed and sentenced to Aomori Prison. The year was 1936. Life in Aomori was a living nightmare. Days were filled with grueling labor, and nights were spent in a cold, damp cell. The guards were relentless. Shiratori endured beatings and psychological torment. But in the quiet darkness of his cell, a plan began to form. He noticed a detail others missed: the metal wire that bound the wooden bathing buckets. Every day, during his brief bath time, he secretly smuggled a piece of this wire back to his cell. For months, he patiently worked on the lock of his cell door. Then one night, he made his move. He picked the lock, slipped past the sleeping guards, and scaled the prison walls. He was free, but his freedom was short-lived. After just 3 days on the run, he was recaptured, exhausted, and starving. This time, the courts showed no mercy. Shiratori was transferred to Akita Prison in 1942. Here, the conditions were even worse. He was placed in solitary confinement in a cell specifically designed for him. The walls were smooth and high, impossible to climb. He was forced to wear heavy shackles on his hands and feet, 24 hours a day. The winters in Akita are brutal, with freezing temperatures and heavy snow. Shiratori was given only thin clothing, left to shiver in the biting cold. For months, he endured this torment, his body growing weaker, but his mind stayed sharp. He was observing and waiting. One guard, a man named Kobayashi, showed him a flicker of humanity, a small kindness that Shiratori never forgot. It was a reminder that even in the darkest places, not everyone was a monster. Shiratori knew he couldn't break the walls, so he had to go over them. He figured out how to scale the smooth walls of his cell, using the tiny food slot as his only grip. One stormy night, with the wind howling and the guards distracted, he made his move. He scaled the walls, navigated the prison's outer perimeter, and vanished into the blizzard. He had done it again. This time, the authorities sent him to the end of the world, Abashiri Prison, located on the northern island of Hokkaido. Abashiri was Japan's version of Alcatraz. It was an inescapable fortress, surrounded by a frozen sea and desolate wilderness. The winters were Arctic, and survival outside the walls was considered impossible. Shiratori was placed in a specially constructed cell. He was shackled with custom-made restraints that were supposedly unbreakable. The guards checked on him constantly. They were confident they had finally broken him, but they underestimated his genius. Shiratori used his miso soup daily to eat away at his iron shackles. He would secretly apply the salty liquid to the bolts. Day after day, week after week, rust slowly and steadily gnawed at the metal. He also dislocated his own shoulders to be able to squeeze through the impossibly small food slot in his cell door. After months of meticulous preparation, on a freezing night in August 1944, he put his plan into action. He slipped out of his rusted shackles, dislocated his shoulders to fit through the tiny slot, and crept out of his cell. The prison felt like a maze, but Shiratori moved like a ghost. He had timed his escape perfectly with a storm, using the noise to cover his movements. He scaled the final wall and disappeared into the icy wilderness of Hokkaido. For the next year, Shiratori felt like a ghost. He survived in the mountains, foraging for food and hiding in abandoned mines. He watched Japan surrender and the end of World War II from a distance. The world changed, and so did he. In 1946, a farmer offered him a cigarette. This small act of kindness moved Shiratori deeply. Tired of running, he admitted his identity to a police officer. His story became a national sensation. During his trial, the court listened to his accounts of the horrific prison conditions. A judge in Sapporo acknowledged the inhumane treatment he had endured. He didn't get the death penalty for escaping instead. He got 20 years for manslaughter. The court decided he'd serve his time in a nicer prison in Tokyo. Thank goodness, the nightmare up north is finally over. Shiratori was sent to Tokyo's Fuchu prison in 1948. Here, for the first time, he was treated with dignity. The guards were respectful, the conditions were clean, and he was given meaningful work. Guard Kobayashi, the one-kind man from Akita, even testified on his behalf. For the first time in over a decade, Shiratori felt like a human being again. The man who had defied 4 prisons, who had survived impossible odds, finally stopped running. He accepted his punishment and became a model prisoner. He never attempted another escape. In 1961, after serving his time, Yoshie Shiratori was granted parole. He was a free man. He eventually reunited with his daughter and lived out the rest of his days quietly, working odd jobs. Yoshie Shiratori's story is more than just a series of incredible escapes. It's a testament to the power of human endurance and the will to survive. He wasn't a hero in the traditional sense, but his intelligence, patience, and unbreakable spirit made him a legend. He proved that, no matter how strong the walls or how heavy the chains, you can never truly imprison the human mind. His legacy reminds us that even in the face of absolute despair, there is always hope. If you found this story as wild as I did, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss what's next.